And when we talk about finance and wealth, a lot of people look at, well, how much more money can I make? Well, it's actually about how little tax can you pay, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to make $1 million in a lifetime. That's definitely happening. The way that you make more money is by saving the amount of tax you pay, but by getting strategic about what you buy, when you buy, and how you buy it.
Audio Jungle.
Welcome to the Prospecting Show, where each week we talk about tips, tricks, and methods for growing an amazing small business pipeline. I'm your host, Dr. Connor Robertson, and on this podcast you can expect segments on communication, perceived value, opportunity, and closing. Thank you to everyone who has supported my 100 episodes and 100 days goal going into 2020. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Prospecting Show. Today we are going to talk about tax breaks in the sale. And I know that's probably a little bit different than what most people are expecting from this podcast, but going along with prospecting, there are some components in the sale that can really help make your prospecting experience and your closing experience a lot better for you and your customer. So we're going to talk a little bit about Section 179, which is a relatively new tax setup that has been put in place by the Trump administration until 2022. And what that looks like is a combination of a few different things, but the major win for businesses here is that you can depreciate 100% of your purchase in the first year. And so a lot of times people confuse accelerated depreciation with Section 179. The accelerated depreciation is where you're just moving that up. Instead of depreciating something over 5 years at 20% per year for a total of 100%, you are actually going to accelerate that depreciation up front. In Section 179, there's a little bit of that involved, but it also allows you to make purchases in your business that you otherwise would not get any deduction from, and allows you to take 100% of it right up front. And so regardless if you have an accountant or a tax planner or what it is, when you're in the sales process with a potential client, it's super important to talk to them about ways that this particular purchase can actually help them, because at the end of the day, it's going to help you close the deal, it's going to help them buy, and we know that the whole world kind of goes around with salespeople, because if you have stuff that needs to be sold and people to buy it, the salesperson is the person who's able to broker that relationship. So that said, it's super important that people who are selling products, especially capital equipment products that would qualify for something like accelerated depreciation, Section 179, or some other deduction, that they understand the tax rules so that they can help use that in the pitch. So that would look like something along the lines of, hey Jim, we have this great product here, it's going to cost you $25,000, but here's the best part: with the new tax laws, you're able to depreciate 100% of that right now, meaning that you're going to save yourself all that tax, which you otherwise couldn't have done in your business. Does that sound good to you? And then he's going to say yes or no, and that's going to be a great pivot point for you and your business to be able to help sell more of what you have. So I kind of urge everybody to go look at Section 179, learn a little bit about how depreciation works. You can look at cars, for example. I know most people listening to this are not necessarily selling cars, but if you go there, you'll see what's called a residual. And a residual is basically the value of the car that's left after a lease term. So let's say you're leasing a car, you take that car for, let's say, 36 months, 12,000 miles, which is pretty standard in America, and it's going to have a residual that car is worth when it has 36,000 miles on it and it's 3 years old. And that residual on something like a Subaru, for example, is 61 to 65%, which is extremely high. Other cars like Hondas and some more exotic cars like Range Rovers have really bad depreciation, which means that after 3 years, they're really not worth a lot. So when you're doing a sale with somebody, you got to consider what would the average depreciation of your product be, so that you can figure out how to sell them around that concept. Because at the end of the day, they don't really care, just about they're not caring just about how good the product is. They're caring about two different things. two or three different things. Number one, can it make me money in my business? Number two, can it save me money in my business? And number three, does it make my life easier? So in the case of a car, it's not making you money, it's not saving you money, but it makes your life easier because walking to work would suck. So that's why they have that set up. In the process of selling something, you got to have those three things in mind. And one of those biggest things that you can look at and help use as a sales tool is accelerated depreciation. The next thing is a quarterly estimated tax. When people are self-employed or have an LLC, if you're going to owe more than $1,000 basically at the end of the year, you need to pay quarterly estimated taxes. And what that looks like is they're taking all of their income, they're subtracting their expenses, and then they have their adjusted gross income. And with their adjusted gross income, they're paying tax on that. That's their 15.3% self-employment tax, then their federal tax, then their state tax, and then their local tax. So because of that, you can help sell a product to somebody and say, listen, this quarter you made $25,000. Let's just say, to keep it easy, it's a $100K job, you made $25,000 this quarter. If you buy our $25,000 device, you're going to owe no tax this particular quarter because you had no income this quarter. So that can help offset some stuff for people who maybe have a little bit of credit card debt, or people who are just a little bit behind on things. You can help encourage them to get across the line by reducing their taxable income up front, which ultimately will allow them to be more financially clear in the future. So if you're in the sales process with somebody, you've gone through the prospect and they say, oh, well, why should I buy your product? You can say something like, great, there's a lot of reasons you could buy our product, right? Depends on what's most important to you. So what's most important? And they're going to say, oh, well, I want something that's going to help me get good results. And say, great, well, our product definitely does that, but here's what our product also does. It's also going to save you a bunch in tax. It's going to qualify for Section 179. We're going to do all this training for you. And at the end of the day, it's going to hold its value super well. So if you don't love it in 5 years, you can just sell it at probably about 50% of what it's worth. So they've taken all that depreciation out up front, as opposed to amortizing that over 5, 6, 7, 10 years. And you're telling them, listen, you have a way out if you don't love it after a bit. That's the way that I would be positioning a lot of the sales processes when you have a piece of medical capital equipment, or even something that's non-medical, just any piece of capital equipment that's going to qualify for a small business, and be able to sell it to them and say, listen, this is how it works. You can choose to take advantage of it or not. And when we talk about finance and wealth, a lot of people look at, well, how much more money can I make? Well, it's actually about how little tax can you pay, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to make $1 million in their lifetime. That's definitely happening. The way that you make more money is by saving the amount of tax you pay, but by getting strategic about what you buy, when you buy, and how you buy it. So I think that's super important for people to understand how to get around that system, in the sense of, I'm not necessarily providing finance advice here or legal advice. I'm just saying that there are a set of rules that are out there. And if you're in the sales process, you might as well find out which rules apply to what you're selling and who you're selling to. So you can help be an advisor and go through a consultative sales approach instead of looking at it like, I got to sell this guy something right now because if I don't, then, we're not going to make quota. So I think those are kind of the big concepts that I wanted to cover in this episode. I'm trying to keep these a little shorter, under 10 minutes going forward, so it's easier and enjoyable. But if anybody has any questions, give me a call back, 315-237-3784, or shoot me an email at connor@syntax.com. That's CONNOR @syntax, SYNTACZ.com. Thanks, and have a great day.